house now, and we're going to start working with some vegetables. And the first thing I wanted to show you is a turnip. It's a nice little knife, good for just, it feels good, you know, going inside these little things. So you can take out this little center bit and peel it just normal. Okay, so if we start thinking about the vegetable, when you cut it in half, you got, you know, often you got a different texture in here than you got out there. So you want a little bit of everything. So I cut it in little wedges from the outside in. If you want to be really obsessive, you're going to do a fancy dinner party, you can trim this away and make it a more rounded shape, but right now we're not doing anything too fancy. If they're a little bit old and it gets woody inside, just get rid of them, but these are okay, they'll be fine. And sometimes you have that the white skin is a little bit thick, and that can go away as well. But these are, you know, quite early vegetables, so they should be fine. Anyway, what I want to show you is how to cook, not lose flavor and not lose texture, and get it right, okay? So here we are with our fancy schmancy pans I showed you about. So the other principle is use the pan that fits the job, okay? That more or less fits the job, all right? If you put it in a little pan, you're overcrowded, and you put it in the big pan, you've got too much space, too much air, and that's not what you want. But that actually might be a little bit too small, so let's see about this one. That's better. Okay. So glazing is something, or pan steaming, is what I do with almost all vegetables, okay? It's a principle where you steam it in the water, in a shallow water, and then you cook the water out. So as the water cooks out, all your vitamins, all your elements, all your flavor, and the salt and the butter, whatever you put in there, gets glazed on top of the vegetable at the end, okay? So here we are with our turnips that we're going to glaze. So salt, we're just covering them with water. I mean, eventually we're going to cook out all the water. So if you don't have enough water, you can always add more, but you can't add less, because if you have to pour off the water, then you're going to lose something, you're going to lose some of the flavor, so you don't want to do that. So just put on what you need. You can do this with olive oil for your glazing, because the idea is you're going to cook out all the water, and then when they're cooked, at the end you're going to just toss them in the seasoning you put on, the salt, or any herbs at the end, or butter or oil. Turnip, in my opinion, goes better with butter, but olive oil is fine too. So I'm just going to put a bit of butter. You can put it on in the beginning, not a ton, of course. So while that's cooking, we're going to do something else. So we're going to do a few different vegetables in this steaming method that I'm talking to you about. First of all, asparagus. Asparagus, the way you trim it is you take it and you bend it, and when it snaps naturally, where it's snapping, that's what you want. The rest of it, throw it in the bin. Okay? So you just, wherever it snaps, that's where it's good to eat. It's all perfectly designed. Okay. Just snap that off. And then you've got these little bits here. This is where this knife feels really fun, to just stick it under there and snap that off. Got it? So you trim that, and you pull off these little ones at the bottom. They're just a little bit tough, and I mean, you can eat them, but it's just a little bit nicer to take them off. Okay, I've got them prepared. Ruslan's going to do this for us over here. Okay, courgette. As you saw at the market, we got all these nice courgette. These dark ones, baby, quite small. These beautiful yellow ones, which give a lot of nice color to whatever you're doing. This one, which is a bit pale, but it has this kind of buttery texture inside, very nice. And this one that I just discovered, which looks nice. We'll see how it performs. So one thing about these yellow ones that's nice is you can keep a little bit of this green top on for color. So you see, when you're cooking it, you have this little bit of green, which is a very beautiful contrasting color. I'm just going to do the same thing with all of them. This one, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. It looks a bit seedy courgette, but we'll see how it goes. And then this nice pale one, You see it's got this creaminess inside that I really like in this one. And the color, you can contrast that color as well. I'm just cutting them like this. I don't have a mandolin, but you can do the stuff on the mandolin. I'll show you that when we go to the restaurant. So we just got small, kind of little thin sticks. Okay, so we're going to put it down in our pan, over to the cooker. So we put the turnips on. I put a lid on it. You got to be careful how much you use a lid because it has an effect. But because I want to make sure they're getting cooked, I'm just kind of giving them a bit of concentration for the moment. So like I showed you, see it's not quite done. And if your water's cooking out, you're in business. You just add a little bit more water and keep going until you get the softness that you need, but just little by little, you know, bit of water. Cook it a bit more. So over here we've got the asparagus. Again, I'm just cooking it in shallow water. I'm steaming it in shallow water. So after the water's cooked out, we're going to toss it. I think we'll do this one in olive oil. I already put salt. Got some nice olive oil here. Okay, this is just, I mean, we're not adding spices or herbs or anything today, really. I'm just showing you cooking techniques. So here we've got our courgette. Bit of fire. Now, courgette, you have to be careful of water because it kind of gets very mushy with water. But I'm going to put a little bit in there to just get it started. And some salt. Okay. And then we're going to steam that out and toss it around. And it's going to give this kind of wilted thing. You can do longer pieces, which we used to call courgette spaghetti in the restaurant. You do long pieces of courgette, take out the seeds in the middle and just use the skin. I'll show you that later. And then you have this sort of wilted, very colorful spaghetti. When you use these different colors, mix them together, it'll be very pretty. Okay, so keep your ears open because you can hear when it's getting ready. Okay, so here we have our turnips, and you can see that they're quite soft, but they're not very attractive in their color. So now that the water's all cooked out, the steam has cooked them, the water has cooked them, it's all cooked out. Now what we want to do is glaze them. So we're going to need a little bit of heat there. In the meantime, my asparagus is coming along. That's almost done, but I need that water to cook out in order to show you how this is going to be nice and tasty. So these courgettes, just lightly steaming them. Keep everything nicely spread out. So this is where you're going to do your tossing. I'm going to add a bit more butter just to give them some nice color. So do you remember when I taught you to flip a pan? Because if you go in there now with your spoon, you're going to break them all up. And this is a perfect moment to don't break the veg. Don't muck with the veg. I mean, if one gets stuck, you give it a little turn with your spoon. But you see, we're getting a little bit of color right now. All right, don't forget, use your kitchen towel because it's going to be getting hot now. So I just want to show you something. Like, I just tasted one of these, which is my second rule of the kitchen, which I just broke, which is taste everything. So I find, I mean, they're cooked, but they could be just a little bit more tender. So with this method, don't worry, add a bit more water. It's going to bring up all those colors. And you're going to just glaze it after anyway. So this is kind of a foolproof thing. As long as you've got a good pan like this where nothing's going to stick, you know, let it get cooked. Do it like you want it. Make sure it's right. Don't just say, oh, shoot, I did this and it doesn't work. Get it right. Let's cook it. All right, so the asparagus. So we just cooked out all of our water. I'm just going to cook out that last little bit. So you see it's cooked out. You get a little bit of color on them if you want in the pan, because that's the whole point. You cook it out and then you get a little bit of color. So just spread it out. I'm just going to do some fresh basil. All right, let's look at these turnips. This is our asparagus. Nicely glazed, none of the flavor in the water. So this is the end result of our turnips. Nice and colored on the outside, which is going to give you that nice sweet caramel flavor. And soft and fragrant inside. So the next thing you want to make sure you do is don't leave things sitting in a hot pan. This is like a principle for everything, almost without exception. Like the asparagus, I took it off. And I personally don't see any problem using the microwave within reason, because when you've got something like asparagus, we just cooked it perfectly, but we're not ready to serve, we've got other things or whatever, and especially if you're doing a dinner party and you want to prepare some things in advance, you get your asparagus done, you chill it down, and then you knock it in the microwave to just warm it up quickly, because that's the best way to keep your perfect color, perfect cooking, what we call cuisson. I don't know how to say that in English, the perfect degree of cooking. All right, here you go, nice and glazed. Don't go too far. Get it out of the pan. We're just going to cool this down a bit. These guys, you could actually warm them up in the oven, but mostly what you want to do is get everything cooled down. Or serve it, you know, eat it. Okay, so here's our veg, asparagus, glazed turnips, and these are the courgette. I'm not totally happy with these because remember I told you we had that seedy guy and you have to go with your senses. Anyway, colors are nice. You put a piece of fish on top and a bit of sauce around and you're in business. I mean, the flavor's great. Yeah, great. But one way of avoiding this is just doing the skin, and I'm going to show you that because this is a really nice thing to do in the springtime. We're going to do it much better than this. But the turnips are great, asparagus is ready to go. So you sit down to some nice vegetables, that's fine for me. These are perfectly cooked vegetables. You really brought out the full flavor of the turnip, which is like a really kind of interesting fragrance with a lot of sweetness and caramel, but it's a very particular flavor. It's very unique. So, you know, if you start throwing tons of garlic on there and everything, you're really missing the point. Or if you mix it with a lot of other things, you're missing the point. For me, it's like pure flavors. Just do it right. It's perfect. Now we're going to show you some techniques for roasting in these pans. And the cool thing is, no washing up. You just wash it around a little bit. Don't scratch it. Don't let anyone else use it. And then you know, cover it with a piece of paper or something when you're storing it. And now we're going to show you roasting with our special pans.